President Trump warning the socialist running for New York City mayor to get in line as his radical agenda sparks concern on both sides of the aisle.
Whoever's mayor of New York is going to have to behave themselves, or the federal government is coming down very tough on them financially.
Are you committed to keeping New York as a sanctuary city?
Absolutely, because ultimately we've seen that this is a policy that has kept New Yorkers safe for decades. And it's a policy that we've seen ensures that New Yorkers can get out of the shadows and into the full life of the city that they belong to. And it's one that I will be proud to stand up for.
Host of the Janelle King Show, political analyst and former deputy state director of the Georgia GOP, Janelle King joins me now to discuss. Janelle, let's start there on the sanctuary policies have made New York City safe for decades. I guess Mamdani has never taken the subway if he thinks that, Janelle.
Yeah, you know what? What I continue to hear is the issue that we should all have with compassionate politics. And it's also something that is a running narrative that's coming out of the millennial camp. As a millennial myself, I see this from a very unique perspective. What's happening is you see young people who have lived a pretty cushioned life, a life that is pretty taken care of. They haven't experienced a lot of hardship. There may have been challenges. You may have seen that there is differences. There are people who seem to be doing better than others. There are people that seem to be doing worse than others. And now you're standing in this middle and you feel this compassion, but at the same time, you don't understand how we got here. This is the problem that we're facing. We have a group of young people that feel as though they can change the world for the better, make things good for everybody, but they don't understand how we got here. Pushing these type of policies, pushing this type of rhetoric ignores what's happening in reality. The fact of the matter is crime in New York is at an all-time high. This is not the time to talk about doing anything that's going to further increase those numbers.
Janelle, does Mamdani gaining a national spotlight actually help Trump sell his policies? Basically saying, hey, America, take a look at New York. That guy is where the Democrat Party is headed, and you don't want to be a part of that. Does that actually help Trump?
I do think that it does help Trump. I do. I think it helps the administration as a whole. I think it helps the party as a whole. However, what do we do with this opportunity? What do we do with this platform? We have to remember that the American people are now at a place where we've kind of been lured to sleep. We're off our duty. We're not looking at the details of these policies. We're not asking the tough questions like why and how. We're not driving people in that direction. Instead, we're trying to placate. We're playing these games. And I think that as a Republican Party, this is the time where we have to be the adult in the room. We have to be willing to hurt feelings because it's the right thing to do. And down the line, it would be better for all of us.
Mamdani doubling down on his push to change New York City's landscape, starting with plans to target the city's wealthy. Listen.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race. It's more of an assessment of what neighborhoods are being undertaxed versus overtaxed. I think I'm just naming things as they are. I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country.
Putting aside for the moment the absolute illegality of targeting white neighborhoods by name, I'm going after the white neighborhoods, which is literally what it says on his website. As you well know, the first thing that you learn in constitutional law is that anything discriminatory on its face is automatically illegal. Putting that aside for a moment, what do you make of his comment about billionaires in a capitalist country, a guy who said, I don't like capitalism?
You know what? It makes sense when you're talking about individuals who have been socialized in the socialist agenda from university, from the middle school education, from grade school and high school, where we've been pushing race, we've been pushing the differences. We're not highlighting the fact that there are a number of people who live in those communities. We're not highlighting the fact that communities that you refer to as white neighborhoods can be that simply because of the fact that there are more white people in America. However, when you break down the economics of that neighborhood, you may find that individuals who are of the Indian community, the Asian communities, are those who may be driving the economics, driving the revenue. So it's very ill-informed, but at the same time, to be able to have a conversation that is focused on race, to put on your platform that you are targeting communities based on race, and then try to tell us that it has nothing to do with race, shows us where we are. It shows us what happened in our education, but why our young people don't understand civics. And so I absolutely believe that this is going to fail. But I also, there's a part of me who feels like maybe it should see what happens when you allow this into the country on a very small scale, because God forbid it far extends past that this small city.
Janelle, I'm going to push back there. We really cannot have this in New York City. Please. I know you say it will be an interesting experiment. I'm going to push back and say, no, I don't want to do it. Janelle King, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, Todd. Thank you for having me.
Carly.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech in the manner.
Quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about.
Democratic Socialist and New York City mayor candidate Zohran Mamdani, he was refusing to condemn that anti-Israel phrase despite being asked about it 3 times. The slogan is widely seen as a call for violence against Jewish people and has become a rallying cry at pro-Palestinian protests across the United States. Brian Yennis is live from New York City Hall as this race is underway. Hi, Brian.
Dana, good morning. Well, New York City has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, which makes these accusations of anti-Semitism against Zohran Mamdani and his response to those accusations particularly glaring. And it also appears to be giving pause to the Democratic Party's leadership, like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, a New Yorker who is still not endorsing Mamdani.
We don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap. I have never had a substantive conversation with him. Globalizing the Intifada, by way of example, is not an acceptable phrase, and he's going to have to clarify his position on that as he moves forward.
Mamdani's immigration policy is also raising eyebrows. He wants to strengthen New York City's sanctuary city law by not allowing any ICE cooperation in the city's jail, and he wants to spend $165 million tax dollars on providing illegal immigrants legal defense.
We have to stand up and fight back, and we haven't seen that from our current mayor. The NYPD's job is to create public safety in the city, not to assist ICE agents in their mission to attack the very fabric of this city.
So now President Trump is threatening to strip New York City of federal money if Mamdani wins. In 2025, over $9 billion of the city's budget came from the federal government.
He's a communist, and he's a pure communist. I think he admits it, but I can't imagine it. But let's say this. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. He's got to do the right thing.
Mamdani doubled down yesterday that he is not a communist, but Republicans point out, Dana, that having government-run grocery stores is straight out of the communist playbook. Dana?
All right. Brian, thank you.
So I want to bring in Lizzie Zavetsky, friend of the program, pro-Israeli activist. And Lizzie, welcome back here. I guess when you have to deny the fact that you're not a communist, I mean, it's a very interesting campaign to start with. The New York Times had this piece this morning. It's an op-ed by Michelle Goldberg. She says plenty of Jews love Zohran Mamdani. The attacks on Mamdani during the primary were brutal, but now that he's a national figure, those coming his way will be worse. His foes will try to leverage Jewish anxieties to smash the Democratic coalition, end quote. Is that the way it's going to go?
Well, first of all, there have been Jews since biblical times who have put their progressive values over our own community's safety. I call it suicidal empathy, and it is a problem, but I don't think it's enough of a percentage to really make an impact. You know, there are 960,000 Jews in New York City. I believe that we can turn out the numbers to help us save our city from Zohran Mamdani. But I'm so sick and tired of non-Jews telling Jews what is and isn't hate speech, what should and shouldn't make us feel safe. What Zohran Mamdani has done, what we just saw in the lead-in here with the refusing to condemn, globalize the Intifada, tells us everything that we need to know. We know what an Intifada is. It is terrorism against innocent civilians. How can you not condemn that? When we hear that as Jewish people, of course we feel anxious about that. And rightfully so, because we think about Boulder, about innocent Jewish people being lit on fire. We think about DC, this beautiful young couple who was murdered in cold blood as the perpetrator shouted, "Free Palestine." That's what those statements mean to our community.
Why do you think that he refuses to condemn it? And he says, oh, well, that's not the mayor's responsibility.
Well, look, we have to take a look at where he comes from. This is a guy who founded the Students for Justice for Palestine chapter at his university. This is a radical hate group. His mom signed a petition to prevent the Israeli actress Gal Gadot from attending the Academy Awards simply because she's Israeli. His father is a professor of Marxism at Columbia who was involved in organizing the encampment there. This is who he is, and we need to pick up what he's putting down. I mean, if you're not condemning it...
Lizzie, a lot of those people will vote for him, and he does not want to turn them off. I think that's the real
That's also, that is a very real thing. But if you should be able to condemn it. This is a call for violence against Jewish people.
She tried 3 times to ask the question. The 4th question could have been, I've asked her 3 times. I have not heard a yes or a no. And you could have left it at that. But we did not get to number 4.
We didn't get that.
But he's going to get a debate here, and you're going to have an opportunity to do that yet again.
If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. He's got to do the right thing.
So that was President Trump over the weekend with a warning for Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, who could be the next mayor of New York City after pulling off an upset in the primary. He's facing a lot of questions, including why he cannot condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada. He was given 3 opportunities to condemn that phase in a lot of different ways yesterday. Watch this exchange.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights, people, and that includes Israelis and Palestinians alike.
But do you condemn that phase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado, about this moment of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city. And I've heard those fears and I've had those conversations, and ultimately they are part and parcel of why in my campaign I've put forward a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech. We have to root out that bigotry, and ultimately we do that through the actions, and that is the mayor I will be, one that protects Jewish New Yorkers and lives up to that commitment through the work that I do. Ultimately, it's not language that I use, it's language I understand there are concerns about, and what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my words and my actions.
All right, with that, we bring in New York City's current mayor, Eric Adams, a Democrat who is running for re-election as an independent. Mayor Adams, welcome. It's good to have you here. What is the fact that Mamdani will not just say, you know, globalize the Intifada is an anti-Semitic statement? That means, you know, take worldwide the hatred of Jewish people. What does it tell you that he can't say that? What does it reveal about him, in your opinion?
Well, I can speak of who I am. I condemn that phrase, and I'm clear on what it is. Listen, Mamdani is an academic elitist. Great things that he state on paper, free, free, free. Those are great philosophical things. But when it comes down to governing a city and balancing a budget and ensuring that you can create the environment that we have of more jobs in the city's history. You're seeing how we have made it safe on our subway system and above ground, what we're doing in education. That's what it's going to come down to. And this academic elitist, a person who didn't get a job until he was 29, she was, basically financially supported by his parents. This is about running the most important financial institution in our country, if not the globe, and that's New York. And that's what we need to be focused on.
Do you believe that he has shown support for Hamas? And do you think that this issue is going to hurt him with Jewish voters, which clearly you would need to win that block if you are going to put yourself over the top?
Clearly, he has. And I think that Jewish voters are going to do an analysis to determine exactly where he stands on these important issues. The largest Jewish population outside of Israel is in New York. My focus is on this city because Jewish voters are talking about public safety. African-American voters are talking about public safety. And all the other demographics are the same thing. So when you have a candidate that states he wants to empty Rikers Island. After bail reform was put in place, the most dangerous people are now going to jail on Rikers Island. When you empty Rikers Island, you're returning those dangerous people back to the communities that they have preyed on. That just makes no sense. And only an academic elitist will come up with these philosophical initiatives that are not rooted in logic. May sound good to do everything for free, but when you actually implement them, they do not make sense.
So he seems to have touched on something that is very sensitive to a lot of New Yorkers, and that's the cost of rent, the cost of living in New York. And he's suggesting that, he can make all of these things available to everyone. He pokes a pretty good finger in the eye of capitalism. He says we don't need billionaires. I don't think we should have billionaires, he says, because it's so much money in the moment of inequality. But I want to play this for you when he was asked then and now about whether or not he fits the communist label in terms of what his beliefs are. So let's play the question from Kristen Welker over the weekend and also what he said in the past.
Are you a communist?
No, I am not.
There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it is the end goal of ceasing the means of production.
So it's a little muffled there, but he says the end goal, seizing the means of production, which is a classic foundation, really, of communism.
Well, and what you find is that many, particularly many of our young people, they are, romanticizing these isms. They're romanticizing socialism, et cetera. What I think is more important is for us to look at how do we lift people up in the city and in the country, because New York really guides the entire country. And that's what we've done. When you invest in paying the college tuition of foster care children, when you invest in decreasing the cost of child care from $55 a week to less than $5 a week, when you invest in making sure you do pre-K and 3K, we have 150,000 children enrolled, the largest in our city's history. When you look at those real issues that allow people to continue to see their opportunities, that's so important. You can't do it as an academic exercise. And I think after only 4 years in the assembly, not passing any legislation, and to come and now to run for mayor as though this is some essay you're writing or some academic version of running the city, it's just harmful. And in many cases, it could be dangerous for working class people in the city. Like I'm stating that you want government to supermarkets. You are going to devastate the local bodegas and local stores and the local supermarkets where they employ people by competing. It's just not the right thing to do.
Okay. Mayor, let me ask you about this, because you were asked about Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa, who are they're in this race. And your response to that was, I don't focus on what the other candidates are doing. But don't you need to focus on what they're doing if you want to win this race? Because as Josh Kraushaar points out, the political math is very difficult. It's a long shot. Don't you need to form some kind of coalition with those two in order to win this race?
That's very well said, because that's what I did the last time. I built out coalitions, and I was able to get working class people that came to my calling of keeping our city safe. I'm not like Mamdani, who wants to defund the police. I'm not like Mamdani, who wants to empty our jails out to anyone. And so I want to build those coalitions, and we can do so. Think about this for a moment. 2.5 million Democrats did not participate in the Democratic primary. 1 million independents did not participate, and close to 700,000 Republicans did not participate, as well as independents, as well as, conservatives. There's a coalition of people who did not vote. Many people saw the primary results, but they didn't dig into the numbers. And I know that my message is going to resonate with New Yorkers that want to continue to see the success that we participated. And yes, the cost of living is just too darn high. We know that. And that's why I put
we remember that from a prior one.
Back in the pockets of New Yorkers.
I got to thank you so much, Mayor. I have to leave it there. So I just want to ask you a one-word answer if you can. Will you seek President Trump's endorsement? Yes or no?
Any New Yorker that wants to vote for me, I'm all for.
All right. We'll see what happens. We'll get into that more next time. Mayor Eric Adams, thank you very much, sir. Good to have you with us today. Thank you.
All right, welcome back. Democratic Socialist and New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani making it clear where he stands on a number of radical issues, with one exception. Watch.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada?
That's not language that I use.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado, about this moment of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city.
Why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president.
Always Donald Trump. So we've heard this phrase used during anti-Semitic protests across the country. But what does it actually mean? Well, in Arabic, it translates to shaking off or uprising, and is used to describe rebellions and civil disobedience movements across the Arab world. The phrase is also associated with calls for global solidarity with the Palestinian resistance and encourages uprising. It has often been used in movements or protests against Israel, like the First and Second Intifada, which marked periods of violence against Israelis. So why wouldn't Mamdani condemn this? Joining me now is journalist and author Badia Angar Sargon. He had 3 times to just say, I don't like it, I don't mess around with this type of language, but he just wouldn't. Why? He must believe it.
It's a great question. As somebody who was in Israel both during the first Intifada and during the second Intifada, it's important that your viewers understand what an Intifada is. It means you put your child on a bus to go to school and you don't know if they're going to come home alive or if they're going to be blown to pieces. If only Palestinian resistance took the form of civil disobedience, but it always takes the form of violence against civilians, and that's what the intifadas were. So what does it mean to globalize that? Well, it means they're coming for me here in New York. Make that global. It's a call for violence against Jews. So why can this person not say, I condemn calls for violence against Jews? And the answer is simple, Lawrence. It's because look at who he won with. He won with the highest advanced degrees districts in New York. He won with the wealthy. He won with people who are part of the over-credentialed college elites, from where all of the anti-Semitism that we're seeing now comes out. The average American is unbelievably protective of their Jewish neighbors and would never countenance violence against Jewish Americans. It is all coming from the elites, from the university systems, from people like Zohran Mamdani.
It's bigger than not condemning it. He stands with them. They're cheering behind him. He was one of the first of 2 council members to be arrested right after October the 9th. And this is when, like 2 weeks right after, he was protesting with these people. And they're shouting it behind him. So they may not be his words, but he's standing with the people.
And in fact, 4 years ago at a DSA conference, he said he got his entire political education from starting the Students for Justice in Palestine branch at his college where he was at. So this is very deep in his ideology. One would wonder, you know, he's so big on free speech. Would he allow allow people to talk that way about any other minority, about trans activists. He was just, at the trans movement, at the Pride Parade. Of course he wouldn't, right? The message to New Yorkers is clear. Calls for violence against Jews are completely legitimate in this person's worldview, and we cannot countenance it.
I want to bring this broader because, we're talking about New York City, but this is happening all across the country as well as internationally. The U.S. State Department has decided to revoke a visa for members of the vaudevillian band after they led the crowd in this chant. Watch.
All right, but have you heard this one, though? Death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF.
I mean, the message is very clear. What's your response?
Well, I think it's incredible that they revoked his visa. You don't get to do that in America. People think that this is a free speech issue. It's not. The First Amendment is for American citizens and people who live here. It's not for people who want to come as a guest. We are a pro-Israel country.
That's
the
right.
American people, their moral intuitions are with Israel and with the Jewish people. This is not acceptable, and I think it's so cool that we're putting our money where our mouth is and saying you're not welcome here.
I don't think many people realize, but the Israeli military and our military are linked in arms. We do a lot of our trainings together. Their hostage rescue team is one of the best in the world. We train together. We go to combat together. We are a Judeo-Christian country. This is not something that we're going to allow people to come in and just change overnight.
America has a long and deep history of philo-Semitism. It is a very pro-Jewish country. Now, there's a very interesting debate happening among young people, both on the left and the right, about aid to Israel. But you know what? We get a lot of bang for our buck in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of developing weaponry that keeps Americans safe. So I support that kind of a debate. I think young people are in a different place than the older generation, and that's great. We should have that conversation, but they should be prepared. We're going to lose a lot in terms of our military vivacity and ability to protect Americans if we break that bond.
Yeah. We also, with that requirement, when we do give them money, we have the requirement that they buy American-made weapons. So that money comes right back into our economy.
Sure does.
But you know that already, Badia. Thanks so much, my friend. We appreciate you.
God bless you.
You too, my friend.
Moderate Democrats are sweating through a hot socialist summer. Zohran Mamdani is closing in on the Democratic nomination for New York City mayor, and he's already stirring up controversy. The socialist refused 3 times to condemn hateful rhetoric that calls for violence against Israelis and Jews.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights.
But do you actually condemn it?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech.
Why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president who is looking to do those very kinds of things.
Okay, what? Anyway, Zohran had no hesitation condemning billionaires and the white neighborhoods he wants to tax.
Explain why you are bringing race into your tax proposal.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race. It's more of an assessment of what neighborhoods are being undertaxed versus overtaxed. I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality.
And President Trump is sizing up the man he might have to work with.
He's a communist. I think it's very bad for New York. I don't know that he's going to get in. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. Whoever's mayor of New York is going to have to behave themselves, or the federal government is coming down very tough on them financially.
He said if Benjamin Netanyahu comes to New York, he's going to have him arrested.
Oh, he's a radical left lunatic.
So this was burning up the airwaves, partly because it's not just a New York story, in my opinion, Kennedy. I feel like this is a tale of things to come, and it's coming to a city near you, because there are patterns here on behavior, on the slogans, and the tactics on which he is doing this campaign.
Yeah, and you know, this old song and dance has been used over and over again, but it's a Ponzi scheme because there's always a new group of voters who, you know, look at this stuff and they see it all and they take it at face value. It is a very superficial, very slick message, incredibly well packaged. But if you look beneath the surface and you look where socialism and democratic socialism has harmed communities throughout the country, you don't have to look very far. You know, you can go to Chicago and let's go Brandon Johnson, the mayor there, has done a great disservice to the city. And there are writers there, reporters and citizens who are warning New Yorkers, don't fall for it. It is a scam. He doesn't have your back. He is not going to improve these neighborhoods. He's going to turn Madison Avenue into the market of sweethearts like they have in Roosevelt Avenue in his home district of Queens. So it's incredibly dangerous, but he's done a great job targeting voters who haven't heard it before. And my advice to them is talk to the exiles from places like Eastern Europe and Cuba, where socialism kills. Or, you know, talk to some of the free market reformers in Sweden who saw their GDP swirling down the toilet when they tried to be a socialist country, the kind of country that Bernie Sanders admires. But that system of governance and economics doesn't exist in Sweden anymore. They had to change. They had to move to the right to survive.
Would you put Portland in that same category?
Absolutely. Portland and Seattle, all these cities where they have ultra-liberal DAs who hate cops, they hold these cities hostage. They give all the rights to homeless people and make sure they have as many drugs as possible. And they call it harm reduction, but they don't get people into rehab. They have abandoned the drug courts, and they are human waste that they have just thrown onto the streets.
Harold, he is kind of the only one that has figured out a way to go through the window that opened when basically Mayor Adams decided to run as an independent. He and Cuomo felt too old, too scandalized, too like the campaign was very lackluster, didn't even try. And he just said, I'm going to go right through here. And he created a lane. And now the Democrats are looking at that. Wait, so who is our leader? Is it Hakeem Jeffries? Is it Schumer? Or is it this guy?
So it's always good to have Greg Gutfeld back around the table.
Thank
brother.
you,
It's good to see
Harold.
you.
I missed you. Did you get my card?
I didn't.
Dana, you asked a couple questions in there. Now, the leader of the Democratic Party here in the city, he has become a face of it, Mamdani. I still think Eric Adams, as the incumbent, would make a claim to that. And I don't know what Andrew Cuomo is going to do. I think he still has a line on the ballot. But let's step back. I didn't understand his interview with Kristen Welker. He said that he didn't want to add race or introduce race to this, but he doesn't want to police speech. But I guess it's okay for him to add any kind of speech he wants and just wrap it or defend it with the notion of free speech. I wonder what he thinks about the word slavery. Is that something you don't want to talk about? Or what he thinks about the N-word? Does he have friends who use that word and we may misunderstand it? To talk about wealth and race, I think, is the most racist thing to do. So I hope if he's going to be, he is the leader, the nominee for the Democratic Party. I hope he understands that, and I hope he reassesses how he talks about these things, because a lot of people are listening and a lot of people are reacting. Two, I give him credit in this regard to your question, Dana. He figured out something we've been saying around this table, that affordability is the issue on most Americans' mind. And I wouldn't argue with Paul, public safety and security is as well, but affordability was a big, big issue. And the person who grabbed it the best, who talked about it the best, who developed answers after tackling the issue the best, was Donald Trump. His answers, he's diagnosed the challenge, I think, here in New York, right? That prices are way high for housing. Prices are way high for small business owners. But to give away everything free as the answer, I think it's hard to say to small business owners who pay taxes, who work hard, who want to instill a work ethic in their employees and their children and those around them, that we should just give everything away for free. So whomever is his leading opponent, whether it's Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams is certainly on the ballot, that they craft a message around these things to go after him and make him answer. How are you assessing wealth through race, but you can't condemn global intifada? You can't condemn or acknowledge the state of Israel's right to exist. I mean, these are real questions I think he's going to have to answer.
He wants free rent. He wants $30 per hour for minimum wage, which basically means that every business is going to have to figure out a way to come up with all of that money. And Paul, the other thing that he had been for is defund the police. And you lived through that. And he's trying to sort of weaselly walk himself out of it, but it's there in black and white.
Look, we're going to get to know him a lot better before game time here in November, all right? And this is very early in the game, so right now it's got to be all teased out. Let's go through a couple of things. First of all, how far would you be able to get away with saying globalize apartheid? Because that's how that hits the ear of Jewish Americans. To globalize the Intifada means, okay, the Intifada is an uprising in the Middle East. You can attack Jews. If you're globalizing it, that means you can do it anywhere. Furthermore, he says, you know what, mayors shouldn't police speech. Yet at the same time, he is saying, I am going to crack down on, quote unquote, bigotry and hate speech in the 5 boroughs. And he mentions MAGA, naturally, of course. So that's very contradictory. Let's remember something. He got in because I would argue he's the first guy to truly weaponize. This is the first TikTok campaign.
Yep.
He's the one who figured out how to weaponize TikTok to get him in. So when you consider the fact that it's received wisdom on both the left and the right, that TikTok is a Chinese influence operation, which it is, okay? The American TikTok looks very different from the TikTok that you get in Beijing. If that's the case, is it any shock that his electorate tracks closer to Beijing than it does to New York or Washington? Of course it does, because that's what they're getting. They're getting Beijing's message. Now, I'm not saying he's a Beijing agent, he's a Chinese agent, he's part of the CCP. I'm not alleging that, but it's the ideology. And that's just basically that. Real quick, let's go through the metrics of the vote since you bring it up. What he's doing right now is he understands that chances are Cuomo's not going to be there by game day, which means his main adversary is going to be Eric Adams. So what he's doing is he's leaning very hard into the black vote. He knows that Adams is going to peel that off. So that's why you see him. He's meeting with the Reverend Al. He's with Spike Lee. He's quoting all of a sudden he's talking about Reverend King, which you've never heard him do. And he's doing this thing. Well, I said white. I didn't mean white. What he's trying to do is peel off 10%, 15% of the black vote. Because remember something, Cuomo got the black vote over him. He knows that. He's a clever politician. But let me just close by saying this. This is the fault, in my estimation, and it is a fault, because this is just a disaster. We get 8 years of this guy's going to be nothing left in New York. All right. This is the fault of the teachers.
Yep.
Because the kids don't understand that if you just take one look at history, name anywhere, a socialist/communist regime, and he is a communist, according to all its specific, I could go through it, he tracks to all the communist ideology. He's talking about seizing the means of production. I mean, that's right out of Marx. But punting on that, the bottom line is, if you look at anybody who inhabits the space he inhabits throughout history, not one has ever succeeded without devolving into a dictatorship. China, Russia, Cambodia, Cuba, Venezuela, they're all nightmare regimes. Essentially, New Yorkers of a certain age, under 25, completely ignorant, are voting for a guy who is telling them, I am the state. I'm going to make the decisions. You run it, go ahead. That's what they're doing.
Greg, within about 2 years of becoming a U.S. citizen, he was joining protests demanding statues of founding fathers be taken down and calling America a racist country. And that's the kind of thing that really turns people against overall. Like, you get the polarization that gets stronger.
Yeah, also, he's just not deep.
No.
This is a very shallow person. This guy makes David Hogg look like Margaret Thatcher. And I would be careful on how you criticize him, because remember, the Democrats' fault with Trump was that they went after him without offering an alternative. Yep. So the accusations of Islamism, is that it? Islamism? Islamism, whatever. Like it's going to feed into Islamophobia. Calling him a socialist in New York isn't an insult. It's a virtue signal for the luxury believers. You know, the hard left are going to flock to the person that we say creates the most harm. And in a low turnout city, that's all you need. A lot of people are really comfortable in New York, and they're not even going to pay attention. This guy's going to sneak in. I think you need to explain to these people what socialism is. It's redistribution. To get free stuff, you have to take it from everybody else. So it's theft. They're taking from your parents to pay for what? Imagine government-run supermarkets. Imagine a 7-Eleven that looks like the DMV, but with even less goods. That's how dismal and depressing it's going to be. So he's the walking, breathing definition of the luxury belief. That is the stance that only the elites can endure, because the brunt of the policies will destroy the lower class. They can't afford this. So it's easy, like you said, to vote for defunding the police if you have private security. It's easy to promote sanctuary cities when you don't live near the Roosevelt Hotel, or you're not competing for jobs in which the wages keep getting lower and lower. So I would just, for people that don't know this guy, remember, it wasn't Daniel Penny he defended. It was the deranged perpetrator, Jordan Neely, a psychopath who threatened to kill citizens in the New York City subway, who was a violent offender. That's the choice he made. So if you vote for this guy, you're making that choice too. This guy will send New York City back to the swirling muck that it once was in the 70s, but it's not going to happen with a wide-eyed, crazy, freak. It's a glib, polished, elite, airbrushed by the Soros Foundation.
Yeah.
The worst part about it is, what do we do? I live in a neighborhood where a woman was nearly murdered around the corner from me by a deranged homeless guy. One guy was murdered 2 doors from me in the end of the last summer. What could happen? Like, when do we move? Like, when does a company decide that it's no longer safe for its workers to be here?
Yeah.
That's a decision, because you know what? I love having a career, but I cherish my survival as well.
And the blessing you have is you have that option. So many of the people he wants to represent don't have the option to just get up and move out of the city.
That's right. What'll happen is the people who can afford to do it will pay their way out of it. This is really what happens.
But the vast majority of people have to
stuck
stay,
here.
and that's what people have to pay attention to.
Well, we'll see what happens. I also think that both parties are failing to provide true economic policy options that give people an opportunity and hope so that they can also realize the American dream. So there's an opportunity there.
President Trump has a big warning for the Big Apple. He says there could be serious financial consequences if Zohran Mamdani becomes the next mayor of New York City. This, as several high-profile Democrats have yet to throw their full support behind the Democratic Socialist. Correspondent Brian Yennis reports from outside New York City Hall.
I condemn that phrase, and I'm clear on what it is. Listen, Mamdani is an academic elitist.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams attacking Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani for failing to denounce the phrase globalize the Intifada, which is seen by some Jewish groups and leaders as a call to violence.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use.
3 times he was asked.
Do you condemn that phrase?
And 3 times Mamdani chose not to.
Why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible.
Citing concerns from Jewish constituents, Democratic leadership, including New Yorkers Governor Kathy Hochul and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, appear hesitant to endorse Mamdani.
This is, it's early in the process, and I'm just going to continue having conversations.
We don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap.
But the White House appears eager to make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party.
The Democrats are doubling down on craziness and radical policies that are undermining the very fabric of our country.
Mamdani promises to deliver government-run grocery stores and to fight back harder against ICE deportation efforts. President Trump says if Mamdani wins, he could strip New York City of federal funding.
He's a communist, and he's a pure communist. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money.
Mamdani denies that he's a communist. President Trump's threat could have a big impact. In 2025, New York City received more than $9 billion in federal funding. That's more than 8% of its annual operating budget. Brett?
Brian Yennis, outside City Hall. Brian, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.